Good morning, Mr. Chief Executive. Two questions from Full TV News. So the first question is, after Jimmy Lai's sentencing, you described him as having committed numerous heinous crimes and his evil deeds were beyond measure for the 20-year imprisonment. Do you think the sentence reflects his culpability? Will the authorities appeal the sentence to the judiciary? What are your views on the perspectives of European and American countries regarding the case? And the second question is, the government has issued a questionnaire to Wangful Court residents on the rehousing scheme for more than a month. Will you commit to having a more optimized scheme before Lunar New Year so that residents can celebrate the New Year with peace of mind? And additionally, the government's proposed scheme may involve the use of public funds. Will you instruct the Financial Secretary to reserve funding for Wangful Court rehousing in the budget to be announced at the end of this month? Thank you.
Jimmy Lai, who has betrayed the country and Hong Kong, has been sentenced to 20 years imprisonment, a heavy punishment that sends a solemn warning against malicious plots of collusion with external elements and endangering national security. Lai has committed numerous heinous crimes, and his evil deeds were beyond measure. The heavy sentence of 20 years imposed on him manifests that the rule of law is upheld and justice is done. Lai had long used Apple Daily to poison the minds of the people of Hong Kong by inciting hatred, distorting facts, deliberately stirring up social antagonism, and glorifying violence. He has openly begged for external forces to impose sanctions against China and the Hong Kong SAR, sacrificing the well-being of the people of China and Hong Kong. He caused damage to the interests of the country and the Hong Kong SAR. His conviction is supported by overwhelming evidence, and he deserves the punishment after all the harm that he has done. The court pointed out clearly in its verdict handed down earlier that Lai was the mastermind of the case. He had manipulated and exploited Apple Daily to poison society and colluded with external forces to back for sanctions and hostile activities against China and Hong Kong SAR. Lai's malicious plot spanned across both the periods before and after the promulgation of the Hong Kong national security law. His intent was to collude with external forces to harm the interests of China and Hong Kong SAR, as well as those of the people. He has shamelessly acted as a pawn of external forces to endanger national security. The court has already handed down heavy sentences for Lai and the other defendants in accordance with the law, manifesting that the rule of law is upheld and justice is done. That said, Hong Kong as a whole has already paid a heavy price. Poisoned by Lai and Apple Daily under his control, some of our citizens, especially young people, have been misled to break the law and become radical and violent. During the period of black violence, they committed acts of vandalism on public facilities. Not only did they storm the buildings of the Hong Kong SR government, the Legislative Council, and offices of the central government in Hong Kong, they also threw petrol bombs, committed arson, and even set people on fire. Furthermore, some young people smuggled real guns, made bombs, and made plans for terrorist activities. It was fortunate that the police had promptly cracked down on these plots and prevented mass casualties. However, many young people who have been incited to commit crimes eventually ended up in prison. As of the end of last year, more than 2,400 individuals have to face legal consequences for unlawful acts during the period of black violence. It is plain to see that the evil deeds committed by Lai and his syndicate were beyond measure. Hong Kong, as our government, has completed the local legislation on Article 23 of the Basic Law and enacted the Safeguarding National Security Ordinance. The Hong Kong National Security Law and the Safeguarding National Security Ordinance are complementary to each other to establish the legal protection for safeguarding national security. They also protect the legitimate rights and freedoms of the people of Hong Kong, and the Hong Kong SAR will do all its best to prevent, suppress, and punish acts and activities that endanger national security and fulfilling its rights, and fulfilling this responsibility of the most righteousness. Since we took action against a lot of syndicates who were involved in crimes relating to endangering national security, Western countries and also politicians and organizations have been bad-mouthing Hong Kong's righteous action to protect national security. They are doing this, of course, for their political agenda. A lot try to cause trouble in Hong Kong so as to cause trouble to our country, China. Thanks to the Hong Kong National Security Law and Safeguarding Hong Kong Security Ordinance, we now have the tools to take action against all these illegal activities and acts. We will resolutely fulfill our duty to safeguard national security despite all the political attempts that try to smear our righteous action of safeguarding national security. They all do this for obvious reasons. Some of the people we are taking action against are their pawns, are their representatives, are under their influence to endanger Hong Kong's and our country's national security. It will be against their interests that we successfully neutralize their attempts. So these attacks, I expect, will continue because this is something they will not stop in order to ensure that their own national security interests override others. Certainly, I will not allow that to happen. Regarding sentence, the DOJ and the police will study in detail the judgment and the reasons and consider it fully. Regarding Wangful Court, okay. I attach great interest and importance to the long-term accommodation arrangements for residents of Wangful Court, and government has been continuing to provide suitable assistance to the affected families. Well, the issues that the government has to resolve are really complicated because each household has its own circumstances and needs, and there are also very diverse opinions in society. The government must carefully consider and deal with the various views and take into account some very practical issues, such as the appropriate use of public resources, the allocation of public funds, the distribution of housing resources, and the relevant legal ownership-related responsibilities and challenges. The government has also need to properly manage the transitional arrangements of accommodation. Timely action is crucial, so the sooner we can make available the options for residents to choose, the better. The Task Force on Emergency Accommodation Arrangement, led by Deputy Financial Secretary, has been working incessantly to develop a concrete plan in the following directions. First, to consider the wishes of the affected families while ensuring the efficient use of resources and balancing empathy, reason, and law. Second, to provide multiple options to affected families, including home ownership scheme and green form subsidized home ownership scheme flats, as well as Hong Kong Housing Society units. And also, third, to offer accommodation arrangements either within Tai Po or across different districts. Through the One Social Worker, One Household service, the task force collected preliminary preferences from affected flat owners. Currently, responses from them have largely been received. The task force is working intensively to compile and analyze flat owners' preferences regarding different options. Initial observations indicate that the vast majority of owners hope the government will expedite the handling of long-term rehousing work. A significant proportion of flat owners have expressed willingness to consider the government's acquisition of their ownership rights. Some flat owners have indicated that they need to look at the actual acquisition price. The task force is currently working hard to overcome some of the following issues which poses difficulties and challenges. First, how to handle the differing needs of various families in a consistent manner. Second, issues regarding liability, compensation uncertainty, and relevant legal matters concerning the public insurance of Wangful Court. Third, whether ownership-related responsibility and legal disputes will pose risks of prolonged delays in resolution. I have instructed the task force to promptly study the feasibility of various options and the legal issues, seek advice from the Department of Justice, and propose arrangements as soon as possible. I understand this is no easy time for families of Wangful Court. The government will work tirelessly to finalize the plan as soon as possible, enable affected families to make the most suitable choices, and assist them in rebuilding their homes and resuming their normal lives as quickly as possible. Regarding our arrangements, of course, we may have to use some public funding. The government will prudently make assessments and make appropriate arrangements to ensure that public funds are used effectively, striking a balance between the needs of the residents and the reasonable use of public resources. Thank you.